Welcome to the Board Game Community Show. I'm your host, Riley Stark. Join me as I get to know folks in this community. They could be designers or streamers, podcasters, YouTubers, publishers, whatever. Really anything within her at the end of its title is welcome here on the Board Game Community Show. Welcome back to the Board Game Community Show. Today I am joined by an awesome game designer, Randy Flynn. How you doing?
Doing good. Thank you very much, Riley.
Good. I'm really excited to have you. I already told you beforehand, but Phil Amelon, he's been on the show a couple times. He's actually, he's technically the only person other than my wife to be interviewed in person.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but he suggested I have you on, and that was the push I needed to finally ask you. And so I'm glad we're talking. This is great.
Cool.
So what got you into board gaming? And
it's always a fun question. I was like the origin story, the this and the that. And I tried to tell different parts of it or different, angles on it at different times. But the way you ask it, I played various games as a kid, probably Scrabble the most. My dad in particular was a big Scrabble player. But played Yahtzee some, played Monopoly when I was younger. I'm probably forgetting a lot of the games we played along the way. I certainly learned to play chess and backgammon and some of that, Parcheesi, Sorry. I also messed around when I was a kid with some game design stuff, which is funny because I've forgotten it until actually I was on some other podcast or interview show and it suddenly occurred to me. But I did some war games that were moving tanks around and stuff, which I think had a lot to do with some of the friends I had at the time. They were kind of into that, and I learned all that. So I did a few different things, but I didn't play a lot of board games as an adult. Until I met my partner Marlene and her son. And I think at that point I had heard of Catan. And I think I thought it was a video game at first. I was like, I just need to check this out. And then I'd learned that it was a board game. At that time I was living alone. I was like, I don't know what to play this with. So we went out and found, a number of games. I did some research on, what games would work well for a 9 or 10-year-old. And we pulled up Catan, we pulled up Carcassonne. It's funny. Those are the two, probably they were the ones most out on media and for good reason. So that's kind of where it started. We started playing that and kind of in fits and starts over the years. It became more and less important to us as a family over the first couple of years. And then at a certain point, it started to become the regular thing. We had nights where we played 3 games of Catan in an evening.
Oh, wow.
The third one was always a mistake and rarely finished. But, we were just down into it, and I think I played 300 plus games of Ticket to Ride against other people online. At one point, that was my go-to late night unwind kind of thing. So that's kind of how I got into it, and we just started playing more and more as a family. And my sister-in-law and her partner joined us eventually, and we have a nice little game group that really we love. Really light games up to through the group we like to play medium heavy games. Heaviest maybe not so much in that group, but we play some fairly heavy games too.
And did that kind of lead to where did design fall into this?
Yeah, as we were playing, board games, that I just started thinking about that. I've always been a builder. Even when I was a kid, before I found computers, I would build things out of wood. I built shelves for my closet once. Some of that detail I think came from my grandfather. And I just like to build things. Eventually that led to a software engineering, degree and career. That was my favorite way to build things. But I looked at board games and I said, this is a design problem. It's a building something, starting from nothing and making something. I like that. I'm getting more knowledgeable about how games work and what I like and what I don't like. And one of my favorite video games of all time is the Sid Meier's Civilization series. I used to play that a ton before I understood the implications of colonialism, I will say. But I loved the game and how it worked, and I loved Catan. I was learning it, so I started designing like a board game that was a Civ game. And I just on my own, I would do it here and there. I started buying materials using almost no online resources. Like I was just clueless about what was out there. Of course, not nearly as much was out there that back then, but there still were resources I should have been using. But I figured it out myself and kind of let it slide, and then at a certain point, after letting it slide for a couple of years, I decided to get serious about it. And I became, again, like me playing 300 plus games of Ticket to Ride late at night. Now it was me in the office thinking it through and planning it out and what I call solo testing, me playing 3 players worth for, several hours on end and going through it. And so that's kind of what led to the start of design for me.
That's awesome. I love that. I always picture, so there's so many different ways to solo test. And I've heard people do different things of like, just having it in front of them and they don't have to move. But I've heard some people will set it up at a table, get up, move to a different seat and like, change their minds type thing. Like I am a new person now. I am no longer player 1. I am player 2.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy, I'll say. And it depends on the game. Some games are easier to do this. Some are almost impossible to do this. If there's any like bluffing or, there's a number of different things that just like, I don't understand how anyone could solo test such games. But most of the ones that I design in some way are solo testable. And yeah, for me, like I found myself getting to the point where I would write at the start of the game, I'd think about the things I wanted to see, and I'd write little notes for each of my players, like focus here, focus there. And it was just a guide. And sometimes, games have luck, and sometimes it'd be like, this doesn't actually make any sense because of the cards I drew or something, but I might scratch it out and change it. And then I, would do a lot of things where like, I would make sure that like if a player in a game was supposed to have a hand of cards, when I was done, I would flip them over. So there was no chance of me like looking when I was playing another player.
Yeah.
And, I don't keep things in my mind well enough. So it worked really well for that. Like literally I would move over 30 seconds later, I'd forget half of what was in that hand anyway. So I'd be just fine. But I do a lot of solo testing. It's interesting. I've talked with Sean Stankiewicz a bit about this from Flat Out Games, and it does seem that there are some designers who do a lot of it, but there are many who just don't. Like it's just not a big part of their process, either because they don't like it, or I don't know. But Sean's also another one who does a lot of solo testing. He also designs very good solo rules for games that often are very similar to the game itself, and I think that helps him a lot too. He designed some solo rules early, and he can just like solo it and do a lot of work on it that way. So, not something I've really dived into myself yet.
Yeah, that's cool. What about your partner? Do you ever, I have to always ask this, like partner, kid, do they play your games ever, like during the playtesting phases?
They do. It's varied a lot from game to game, but they definitely have playtested a lot. I've told this story a couple times, that Civ building game that I was working on. Of course, I got it to a point where I was like, oh, I can actually have people play this. I hadn't been tracking time when I played it myself or anything. I knew it was a long game. It was a bigger game, but I was like, I don't know. So we actually sat down. We actually did one play test that we kind of stopped because we just had people had to go, a bunch of people. We had like 5 or 6 people. So the 4 of us sat down to play it. And 2 hours later, I was like, I'm taking up a lot of their time. And it's going kind of well, but I don't think it's got a long ways to go. And I said, okay, it's been 2 hours. How are you guys feeling? Should we just play another round or maybe 2 and be done? And they all kind of said, yeah, let's play another round or 2, or maybe they said 2 rounds, and then let's just see how it goes. And to make this longer story short, as I've told it before, the game started getting better, which may have been the game, like it might have gotten into a good part of it, or it might have been the beer. Don't know which, or some combination. And we just didn't stop. And we finished the game. So it was the first time a game of that finished 6 hours. We played this game for 6 hours. And let me tell you, the game is not complex enough. It's not it's not TI4. Like, it doesn't deserve 6 hours of play. It deserves maybe 90 to 120 minutes at most. And so, but they got through it. And so, yeah, they've done a lot of play testing for me of almost all the games. So
that's pretty generous with their time, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's awesome, though. My wife, she's only play tested, I think, one of my games, and I'm very grateful for that. But I think, I will only take it to her at a certain stage from now on.
Yeah.
So totally get that. How's it been with Cascadia? You've here at my house, it's huge. We played it back in March at a convention. Somebody taught it to us, and then on Mother's Day, my wife was finally like, let's just get it. We were at a bookstore and they had it there, and she's like, come on, we love this game. And I was like, of course. Like, you could have said that at any point in the last 2 months, and I would have instantly gone online and bought it, or gone to my game store and bought it. Like, no arguments here. And we have played it. It's probably it's our most played game together. And almost every single game night, we've taught it to multiple people. We've taught it to different groups. It's just, and several times before we even finished playing the game, they've gone online and bought a copy. So it's just like a phenomenal game. So, I mean, how's that feeling? Like, to have a game put out there and just like blow up, I think, you're winning awards, right? And you're nominated. So
yeah, it's been, it's funny. People say it was a surprise. How do you feel about this? All of that. And I was telling somebody about this recently, and it's like a slow burn, though. Like, it wasn't like, oh, signed the game, it was released, and it was a huge success, and oh my goodness, it's like you go through these stages, right? Okay, I've signed it. I signed it with basically my friends to publish it, who hadn't yet published a game. They hadn't even, run a Kickstarter the Kickstarter for Calico hadn't been run yet when I signed it. And so I was like, well, we'll see what happens. Whatever happens, I'll have fun developing this game with my friends, and all that. And then, of course, Calico did wonderfully on Kickstarter, won its own awards, and, was thought of for various awards, all that. So then it's Cascadia. It's like, okay, we don't have the orange tabby, so how's this going to do? Well, may not do as well as Calico. We don't, have that kind of pop to it. We love the art. We love everything about the game. We think the game is fantastic, but maybe, and then we get to Kickstarter and it goes well. But in between all of that, we'd actually done the real work. And that's a lot of fun. And especially being part of the collabs, or really myself working on it actively, it's a lot of fun. And you start to really see the game come together. And that's just such a great feeling, because I talk with people about it. It's like, well, I showed it to this publisher, and they didn't bite here, and later talk to them. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't see the game that Cascadia is today. You saw kind of the kernel of the ideas. This publisher looked at me and said, no, I should have seen it. I'm like, I don't know. I know what the game was then, and I know what we did at the collab, and how much better and how much more the game is than when it was signed. So, it's like this, and, then, you have this Kickstarter success. So each stage you kind of get a little more confident that it's going to do okay. It's not going to be a flash in the pan here. It's not going to do that. So yeah, it's very gratifying. And it's great to see everyone on the team, feel that reward for the hard work, because, I was there for all of it and got to see everything that everyone put into the game. And so yeah, it's really, really fun to go through. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, how many awards have you won at this point for design?
I guess you could go on BGG. Maybe there's a list.
I was wondering that.
I don't know. I haven't counted them, because you're right. At first it was like this award and that award. And then, there's a lot of varying sizes of awards and different kinds of awards. And, we've done pretty well in most of the kind of categories that Cascadia fits into. So it's definitely won, a decent amount of awards. So that's definitely nice to see. And I think it keeps the buzz going. And when someone says, hey, this is a great game, and someone goes and searches it, they find good things to say. So, I'm sure it helps the sales a lot, which is nice. Because one of the things I love about social media is getting to see the game played. I mean, for people out there, I'll tell you, if you've posted about Cascadia with a picture, I've probably seen it. I know there's a lot out there, but I've probably seen those pictures, at least looked at them. Because I do searches occasionally. It's great to see the game in different contexts and people playing. Great to see it with kids playing. I love seeing when people talk about, hey, we play with our 6-year-old, and those family rules. Nah, she had no problem. She loved it. So, which again, another credit to the collab for coming up with those rules and working that out to try and maximize who can play it and who can get enjoyment from it.
Yeah. I post pictures on there and you've liked a few of them and I'm always like, oh yeah, I'm glad he likes it. I don't know. You genuinely enjoy seeing your game out there and the joy that it brings to people. So, which it does. When you were saying playing with kids, we played it up at a cabin a couple weeks ago and my nieces and nephews were there and they're younger. One of them probably could have played the family rules, but we just had them drawing chips and turning over tiles for us, and they were ecstatic to do that. Although they definitely cheated. They would we'd see them looking in the back for a bear and put it on a bear tile, match it up with a bear tile. But we figured, what, it's fair because they're doing it for everyone. They just really want to match those tiles. And so we're all playing on an even playing field there.
As long as they weren't playing favorites, you're fine.
Exactly. They did for a second, but it was for my wife. So I was like, yeah, go for it. Then they realized, I'm getting away with it. I can keep doing it. But yeah, we love the production. We love everything about it. It's just such a fantastic game. I know we have another game night planned, and that's the first. My wife is always like, this is the first game I want to play. And then we can play other games, but I want to make sure to get this one in. So, thanks for designing a game that my wife loves to play.
Quite welcome.
Yeah, and that I love to play. That's also another thing, right? It's deep enough. So, anyways, I could just shower you with praise here. Everybody loves praise and doesn't get uncomfortable around it, right? No, but I've seen some of what you've been working on next. I can't pronounce it, so I'm not even going to try. I'll let you.
Well, I pronounce it, kind of double checking all that online as Tabriz.
So close, I think.
There you go. Yeah. I've heard it pronounced a little differently by an Iranian American too. So, I think there's kind of different accents on it and stuff, how hard you hit the A. So, but yeah, Tabriz is a city in northwestern Iran, Azerbaijan region that was on the Silk Road. Has a bazaar that's the longest running indoor bazaar in the world, I believe. And it has a special section for Persian carpets. So that's kind of why when I was trying to name the game, so that came out. And this name is actually mine. Cascadia was a name come up with the collab. We actually debated it a good bit with different options, but with Tabriz, this was the name I gave the prototype once I set the theme on the game, and so that held up.
I think I was supposed to ask you. The group that I played it with last is why is it called Cascadia? That's not a real word, And we came up with theories, but what was the reasoning?
So, when we were going through names, the prototype was called Lands and Creatures. And it was a name that I came up with literally right before a playtest event when I suddenly went, oh my goodness, I need a name to put on this thing. Nicole wants a name and it's going to have to go on the sign. And so I was like, okay, we put creatures on lands there, Lands and Creatures. Good. And I will tell you, through a lot of the debate about the names, that name had a chance of being the name of the game. There were people who liked it all the way to the end. But having, a nice, catchy one-word name is a powerful thing if it's appropriate and evocative. And so, that's when we came up with Cascadia. So, much of the Flat Out team and the collab live in Cascadia. So Seattle's in Cascadia, Victoria's in Cascadia. And so a lot of us live in Cascadia. And, when I signed the game with them, it was not themed to Cascadian creatures yet. So it wasn't a Pacific Northwest theme, but I'd had that in mind. I was like, I think I'm going to change this because it was kind of generic animals. And when I talked with the Flat Out folks about signing it, they were all kind of like, yeah, that's definitely what we should do. And so immediately after signing it, we changed a couple of the animals But the name discussion was definitely interesting. We had, I think, Cascadian creatures was a possibility, and all that. But to your point, like, we knew there would be a whole lot of people who would have no idea what Cascadia was. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, you're going to know the term. You may not know exactly its multiple definitions, political and environmental and various things, but you would be familiar with the words. We live in the Cascade Mountains. It would, all kind of sync together. But we knew that certain parts of, even in the US, people would be like, no. And we're just like, I think I was the one who says it's a pleasing word. Like, even if they don't know what it is, they're probably going to pronounce it with no problem and maybe be curious. What is this word? It's kind of cool, And I think that's kind of how it's panned out. I've definitely seen people who've said they had no idea. Some of them not in the US, but some of them in the United States, having no idea. It didn't surprise me at all. And they still, the name worked. So.
Yeah, we're in that group. Literally 4 of us sitting around a table last week being like, is it because it like cascades, like you're cascading animals, and then just throwing that out there. So like we were not even close. We're totally unaware. Yeah. So cool. And I think everybody was like, well, it's fun to say nonetheless. So
yeah,
bravo. Well, that's cool. Literally didn't know that. And I'm sure my listeners are smarter than me. So, but if you didn't, that's okay too. Learn something new. All right. So back to Tabriz. Shoot, did I say that right already? Did I already get that right?
Good. So okay. Well, yeah.
So are you selling the Persian carpets? Or?
Your job in Tabriz is to make Persian carpets. So you have 3 workers, assistants that you move around the market between trading stalls and shops and some gambling bits with dice, where you want to gather materials to make Persian carpets to meet commissions. So you basically have commission cards that you're going to draw and have privately in your hand, knowing what you need to put that carpet together. And the commissions that you complete give you points. They give you immediate money. They give you possibly income or other ongoing benefits, like the ability to trade this material for that material at the end of every round if you want, like upgrading basically. So the key thing is that you have these 3 workers that move around, and each turn you move one of them up to 3 spaces around the market and take the action on the tile or shop, trading post, whatever that you land on. And each round means you move each of the 3 workers. So the workers all start standing, and when you use one, you lay it down, say that it has to sleep or rest. And then once everyone's played all 3 of their workers, one at a time, then the round is over. Some things happen. Your workshop abilities got like income and other things come into play. And you kind of keep doing that until someone hits a certain number of commissions completed. There's 1 or 2 other end game conditions, but that's kind of the basics of it.
That's awesome. And is it signed yet?
So it's going to be going to crowdfunding this fall. I think it's going to be September or October, GameFound. The page is actually it's been up. In fact, already the first update has already been sent on GameFound with some more information. So they'll be putting together more information about the game slowly before the campaign starts. But it's a lot of art there in pieces and rules and all of that. So it's in pretty good shape, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I love the cover art that I've seen, and I swear I've seen a little something more on Twitter probably.
Yeah, there's been a few of the tile bits that show up in the art. There's been they did a post recently with the meeples, the meeple shapes and kind of the colors, although photography and 3D printing, they weren't really very accurate. But it's still, nonetheless, that was actually cool because it led to people talking about the accessibility of the colors. And even though the colors on those weren't really matching what was planned, it started the conversation. I think it's made some connections, and they're going to get a few more eyes on the colors that they are going to choose. So that's really awesome. Yeah. So that's pretty nice. But there's been a few other things that have come out in art, and there'll be more. But the box cover, Sid Feeney, a graphic novel artist, asked to do this, Iranian American, and I got to see the process of that box cover coming together, from the idea of it all the way up to it being end and all the adjustments along the way, and it was a lot of fun. And I just love the box cover myself.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, look at you working with these amazing artists, really. Like you've got Beth Sobel on Cascadia and now this, like,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous.
And Dan May is doing the art direction and the graphic design and some of the smaller pieces of art for Tabriz. So he's kind of driving all of that. And that's actually amazing too. I mean, he's going to deserve, a huge part of the credit for just how the whole thing looks together and drives together. It is. To your point, when I signed it with Flat Out, Beth was doing the art for Calico. And that was one of the first questions for Sean. I said, so if you're signing it, that does mean you're asking Beth to do the art, right? He's like, oh yeah.
Of course.
But yeah, it's been really, really nice. And it's cool to be a part of that process. I know that with a lot of games and designers, and I know I'll have this experience in the future, like it's kind of a throw it, it's signed, it's thrown over the wall. Maybe you get a few updates and then boom, you see something close to the final product. And I know I'll go through that as well. But right now I've been lucky enough to be very involved in one of the processes and kind of kept along the way and seeing it coming in the other. And I definitely really enjoy that.
Yeah. Something that it took me a few minutes to realize when I was looking at the objective cards in Cascadia, I was like, oh, they cheated here. That's cool. Like it looks like unique art, but you just mirrored it on two of the cards, right? And I loved that. I was like, that's a very smart way to make it feel unique, but also not have to like put in the time and money to, that does, it costs money
it costs time. You have to have the artists, the artist has their schedule, and you've got to have the time in it. So yeah, I actually agree. I thought it was, an ingenious solution. It was funny. Then we're like, okay, but we have 4 cards, but we actually have 5 with the promo.
Yeah.
So what is it? Like, okay, well, it's going to be uneven. One of the mirrors is going to have 3 and the other's going to have 2. It's like, okay, I guess that's all right.
Acceptable, I suppose. Yeah. Just later down the road, you'll come up with some sort of expansion and you can mirror it then.
There you go.
Well, that's really exciting. I'm excited. So this fall, right?
Yeah. September or October.
Okay, great. We can look forward to that. You got some, it's with, was it Crafty Games?
Yes.
Okay. So, you got some like Kickstarter exclusive stuff planned or GameFound? What were you doing it on?
It's going to be on GameFound.
Sorry.
They one thing they are doing is there's for those who sign up to be notified, so kind of the save on Kickstarter or notify here. If you then back the campaign, there's going to be a free gift for folks who had signed up ahead of time. And I think it's actually a couple of things. Like the game comes with a number of dice that get used, and the ones there are ones on the tiles and ones off. And we say those are put in the dice pool. And so one of the things they have there is a cool little cardboard kind of dice holder that won't be part of the main game, but you'll get if you signed up to notify early. And it's going to be a fairly nice production, a little more deluxe. The one that's on GameFound, so you're going to see some fairly nice pieces in there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. All of us board gamers, we love seeing that deluxe stuff. We like the tactile feel of the wood chips and the upgraded bits and everything. So linen cards.
We just played Quacks of Quedlinburg we hadn't played it in a little while, and played it with my son who hadn't played it. I was like, I'm pretty sure he's going to like this one. But we have those upgraded bits. My partner Marlene bought them, at one point because we played it a bunch and knew they were good. And they came down. I think originally those upgraded little bits cost the same as the game.
Yes.
And they sold out because anyone who got them realized they were that good. They felt amazing. And I showed him the original bits and he went, oh, huh. Yeah, it's like, these upgraded bits feel nice. They work really well with the game. It's really nice when things feel kind of appropriate. And to that Cascadia, there's always discussion about how thick are the tiles going to be, how thick are these going to be. And, it's one of the key considerations as a publisher. Like, you want them to feel good. And then you want to find out that that's affordable. Can we actually afford to do that? Cascadia has 100 wood tokens, for instance. So, you had to be very careful about that. But we wanted to make sure that people, pulling those tokens from the bag, that it felt right, that it felt good, that that was an enjoyable thing. And I think that turned out pretty well.
I agree. Yeah. The only thing hey, while I got you here, I can complain at you. No, and I'm sure other people say the same thing of like, it would have been nice to have a bag for the tiles. And we've talked about just going and buying a,
Yeah.
aftermarket bag to do that.
And that was the conclusion. Like, well, people can buy a bag. But
Yeah.
that was discussed quite a bit because it definitely could have been included. It's interesting, though. I mean, it has implications. It's not, even if the cost is right, it's not a no-brainer decision
Oh,
because,
absolutely.
one, tiles wear more when you pull them in a bag. The cardboard ones especially do. And with hexes, that's going to be even stronger. And these hexes are bigger than the ones in calico. So I think the wear would be more. So you'd get more tile wear out of it. That's one. Two, and this is more important. This is important in Cascadia. It doesn't matter in calico at all. Is that it's a game timer. Right.
Oh,
And
right.
so when they're hidden in the bag, I play Carcassonne with a bag. I think one of the expansions had a bag. And I love the bag in Carcassonne for the tiles. But the one thing you lose is a very visual game timer that goes down. You have to be like, "Wait, how many are left?" Someone reaches in the bag. I don't know, like 10 maybe. Whereas with Cascadia, that's one thing I like about not having the bag is that you can literally see it and go, okay, there's this many. So, okay, I have like 3 more turns. Good.
That I did not think about. So I will just tell, people when they say that next time, I'll be like, well, here's why. And it'll make a lot of sense because I do the exact same thing. I'm like, ooh, we're on like our last 2 turns probably. Okay, like time to really stretch out those, am I going to focus on animals or am I going to focus on the land?
The trick in Cascadia, if you do, the quickest way to determine where you are is to count your wildlife tokens. Because that will be exactly how many you've played. And every version of the game, you play 20. So it's up. I have 16, so I have 4 more turns.
Yeah.
I actually made the mistake for a long time of counting the tiles, knowing that I just needed to subtract 3 since you start with a trihex out there. But it was at some point the little bell went off my head. Oh, if I just count the wood tokens, I get an exact number, and I don't have to do that math.
Okay, well, that's smart too. There we go. We do the same. We do the counting of the types because there's 20 of each type. So we'll be like, okay, is it worth pushing my luck to try and get another bear? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we got 16 bears out, 4 more in the bag. Maybe I should move on to the next thing. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's fun.
People love bears. It's always bears. It's always bears. Sometimes salmon too, but it's always bears.
Okay, that's funny how that works because my go-to is always salmon at first and then bears. And all 4 of us were going for bears last time we played. And so the joke became like, they should have called this game Bear Pair. Like, because that's what we all want. We just want pairs of bears. So I enjoyed that. But Cascadia is way better. Are you working on some more games? I'm sure, like, you can't just be moving straight from game to game, right? Like, you've got to have those in-betweeners.
It's a fun challenge to figure out what to work on, to be honest. I really enjoy having games at like different stages of work. Probably the only difficult part to that was when we were heavy in development work on Cascadia, because here's my first game. Like, it was hard not to just put every ounce of energy into Cascadia. There was a lot to do, and your hours mattered. So if you actually had solid work to do, you did it. So other games lost a little bit of focus there. But generally, I like to have something that's I love to have something like signed and being finalized, or something about to be signed, and I'm tweaking have some in the middle that I'm kind of iterating on, trying to get to their end state, and then new ideas. But it is hard for me to work on multiple games like in any one of those states at a time. So like if I have 2 early ideas, like I almost have to set one aside for a while and just focus on one of them. While I can still work on some in the other stages at the same time and go back and forth. But especially the early ideas, they tend to consume you at a certain point. So I had a game getting it signed. It's very, near the end. I just have these 3 tasks left and I can do those over the next few weeks. And then I had this game idea that I've been working on for a long time, and ups and downs. And then it hit a new idea that I think that's the direction I need to take this. And it just sucked all of my attention away from the other one. So luckily that went well, but still it's like, I need to get back to this other game. I've got these 3 tasks I need to finish up on.
Yeah, it's right there. I'm almost there, but I totally get that, right? Like when inspiration strikes, when the iron's hot, you got to go with it.
Yeah, and that's when I talk to people about Cascadia. When the idea struck coming back from a vacation, I mean, the next 2 weeks in particular, but the next, month still, like that was like every waking hour of thinking about, game design. Like it's just like I had it and I just like needed to go until I felt confident in it. And it took every bit of focus to do it. And I'm like, well, that paid off. So, yep, when it strikes and you think you're in that zone, it's like, probably need to follow your gut and do it.
Yeah. So can you tease any other things you're working on or?
Yeah, let's see. And one I've talked about a little bit. There's a little bit about it on social media is Railworks. This is a pick up and deliver railroad game that I'm co-designing with Aaron Mesburn, a designer of Verdant and designer of Overboss, and a few other things. And we've been working on this game for quite a while. It's a kind of a pandemic start. The like 99.5% of this work has been done virtually. And we've had some really good publisher discussions about it. It's gone through about 3 different kind of iterations of I don't say what it is, but big shifts in how it was working. And it's been a joy to work on, and it's something different. So yeah, still working on getting that one signed, but honestly, really happy with how that's gone and the process. And it gets to something like a question people often ask me. It's like, well, what kind of designer are you? Like, what kind of games do you like to design, or this and that? I tell people like, okay, I do a lot of tile laying stuff because I've had some success with it. I have a lot of prototypes that I think are pretty good, tile laying. But really, what I like to do is say, I haven't designed a game like this before. I kind of like these kind of games, and let me see what I can come up with, So that had a lot to do with how Railworks came about, because Aaron actually reached out to me about co-designing something, and he had some ideas. I had some ideas. We threw it out there, and I was just like, I'd really love to do a train game. And I think Aaron was thinking of something simpler, like maybe Cascadia level of complexity, and things. But when we start talking about the train game, he's like, okay, yeah, let's see what happens. So I've done that with that. I've done that with an area control game, and it's area control is not a genre or mechanic I play a lot of. It's one I can enjoy, but also one I could be like take or leave at times. So it's like, well, what would it look like if I tried to design one of those, for example? So I keep trying to push myself in those directions. While not abandoning what I seem to do well at, but still just keep spreading out, trying different designs and different kinds of things.
Well, I love that. Yeah, you got to experiment and stretch your comfort zone so that you can get better at those other things. And you never know what's going to spark that inspiration for something that would be perfect for something that's already in your strong, suit there.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. Sounds like you've got a lot. You're not short on ideas.
No, I'm never short on ideas. I sometimes I'm like, do I have the best ideas to pursue at the moment? I might question myself, but the ideas are pretty much always there, and that's the thing. I mean, it gets said a lot these days. I think people really recognize this. Inspiration and ideas are great, and they're necessary for a lot of game design work. But it's the hard work of taking the idea and making it into something that's important, and it's why a lot of people are like, yeah, don't be afraid to put your stuff out on Twitter or social media and show it and talk about it, because when you go from that idea to this awesome game, it's all the work you put in the middle that really does the job. And so, like my notes for Cascadia that led to Cascadia were pretty simple. It's just like a double tile laying game where the first layer of tiles, dictates how you can play the second set of tiles on top of them. That was it. That was the note. Which was made more than a year earlier than when I actually pursued it. So, was that an idea? Yeah, it was an idea. It wasn't a game, and it could have turned into something mediocre, except some other things sparked alongside it and made a nice combination.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. let's go to outside of board. Or is there anything you want to talk about board game related right now on your
Um,
mind? What have you been playing actually? What you been playing lately?
let's see. I just told you we played some quacks. We've been
Yeah.
pulling some, stuff out. I mean, I've played a few different games recently that are games I've played a bunch of, and they've come out, anew for various reasons. And I'm trying to think, well, what else falls into that category? We played some High Society. We've played Sheriff of Nottingham twice recently. And in fact, I got the chance to play the second edition of that, which I think came out a year or two ago. But that's a game that got a lot of play back when my son was initially playing a good bit of board games. It's the kind of game he loves, and it can be a lot of fun with him playing. And he hadn't played it in a long time, and we had some new people, and I had bought some games on vacation, and we'll get the second edition of Sheriff of Nottingham, and that was an interesting experience because one, we had a lot of fun playing. It worked out just like I thought it would. It was really good. But also, I got to see the changes they made in the second edition of a game I had played a lot of years ago. And It wasn't just a styled update. There's a number of different changes in that. And one is just it's 2 to 6 player or 3 to 6 players instead of 3 to 5. Somehow the box got twice as big with that. I don't quite get the math there, and I haven't figured that out, but it's funny. But then they changed the drafting of the cards or the drawing of the cards. It used to be a little more complex with its own system with 2 discard piles and all this stuff. And they just changed it to, no, you have a deck. And when you draw off the top, that's it. And I was like, my immediate reaction was, oh my goodness, that sounds so good. Like, why wasn't it that way from the beginning? Whatever. And then we played it and I was like, yeah, they learned. They learned from people playing and talking to them that was a part of the game that was just fiddly for very little gain. And it played much more smoothly without that. So, a very good game got even better with that change. It was kind of nice to see.
I've heard several designers, this might be off air, but so I just won't say any names or games, but who have said they have a very popular big game and it's like years later, all of a sudden they realize why did I do this way? If I could do a second edition, I would completely get rid of this or completely change this thing, and it would make the game so much smoother.
Right.
But yeah, it's just kind of interesting. So it's fun to be able to see companies and games get big enough and get that that second edition to be able to get that refined edition. But yeah, it's cool. What's your favorite? This is the hardest question on the podcast, but what's your favorite game?
Oh, it's easy for me. That's Concordia. That's hands down my favorite game. Yeah. I know. Dry, trading in the Mediterranean game, but just the most elegant game of that kind that I've ever seen. And I love that that it works so elegantly. The rules are so nice and tight that it has all these different end conditions that yet somehow tug at each other nicely. And that you can make different variations and expansions and it holds together well. I think with a game like that, sometimes it can feel like, oh, it's big enough that we can just throw an expansion in there and people won't realize how loose it is until years later and we'll be fine. But with Concordia, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like they've got such a good core set of rules that they add something, they tweak it nicely, and it's like, wow, that's actually really good. I mean, there's some expansion bits I like more than others. It's just like Carcassonne, which different level of game that I think has a very similar thing going on where, they've made some amazing expansions for it. Some that I want to play with every time. So
yeah, I love that when a game has an expansion that just feels like this belongs.
It just fits in.
Yeah. I will never not play with this. I've never played Concordia. I've heard so many good things about it, but it just like you were saying, that dry theme, it has always deterred me from being the one to be like, hey, let's get this game,
Yeah, so and I get that. For many people, it is a bit. Yeah, for many people, that's an issue, and I get it. I totally get it. But I will say this: the dry theme fits with, let's call it the dry game, and I don't use that as an insult. My favorite game, so of course I'm not insulting it with that. Right. It's a very dry game. It's a very mathematical. Figure out where to go, and yet it has lots of semi-direct player interaction. I think it's one of the beauties of the game. unlike Carcassonne, which I also love, and I think it's an amazingly designed game, but Carcassonne has the opposite thing. Many people who come to Carcassonne think there's very little player interaction, or it's kind of random, or it's this. And then they play with someone who knows the game and is playing to win. And all of a sudden they're like, I'm playing a different game now. Because, Carcassonne, if you know the game and you're trying to win, it'll be brutal. It will be really, really brutal because your best move is often not to score points. It's to prevent your opponents from scoring points or finishing something, stranding their workers. Those things are much more powerful than you getting those 4 points for that little city. But it can take people, including me, a long time to realize that. And plus, Carcassonne, you make beautiful cities. When I first played Carcassonne, I was more concerned with a nice looking city than I was with like winning or losing or scoring well. So, yeah.
I mean, hey, that ties right back to Cascadia, and one of the reasons we love playing it is because win or lose, right? You can get absolutely slaughtered, but by the end, you've got this beautiful map you've built,
Right.
So I totally.
And that was a goal. That was absolutely a goal. I mean, we talked about that with Beth. Not that much had to be said to Beth in this case. Yeah. Like, hey, nature, we want to look really nice together. Like, go, Beth. Come back with something wonderful. But it was very much a thing. It's like, oh, we want it so that when people are done, they've got something they actually would love to take a picture of. It's like this thing. And we figured if we liked taking pictures of it, having played it hundreds of times, that other people probably would too. And I'm like, yeah, I still take pictures of these boards to this day. And I love seeing pictures of people who have made like crazy river patterns and stuff. They'll go through it and play it. And I've never quite seen that before. I'm like, there's not a lot of complexity to these pieces. Like, I feel like there's only so many ways to put them together, and yet I've never seen anyone snake one like that. Exactly.
Yeah, so. Oh, that's awesome. I think Flat Out Games, they do a great job of doing that type of stuff, right? Like, obviously, Calico, very photogenic game. Every time we played that, I would take pictures of that. And Verdant, I think, will be the same way.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, Verdant doesn't quite have the putting things together. I mean, you put together, but it's very, it's two-dimensional, square. So it's less of that, but the color on the cards and the various things, I mean, it's just those cards are gorgeous. And the way that they put in the colors and all of that, it really has very pleasing look at the end. So I think you're right.
Yep. It's a good hook. It's a good way to hook people in, is to make it so that it's just very visually pleasing, whether you win or lose or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that Stonemaier Games and the artists all spent time making, all of those bird art, just to put on a card, one card, this really nice, bird art. You play that game and every year you're looking at this. Oh, huh. Yeah. I don't know where this bird, I don't think I've seen this bird before. I want to see one now. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, all right. Now let's move outside of board games. What do you like to do?
See, I like to play basketball, which the pandemic largely killed. Except
How
for
tall are you?
6 feet even, so not particularly tall. Although on a pickup game court, 6 foot is more like a forward, so probably playing more like a 6'9" player in the NBA. But so yeah, I used to play in a league once a week, and a long time ago I used to play pickup 2 or 3 times a week, like in the morning, like hardcore.
Wow.
But since the pandemic, we did buy a hoop for our driveway, so we get to shoot a little and play with my son some, who also played basketball in high school, and but I haven't we haven't been able to get back to the leagues yet, and I haven't really pushed it. I'm a little out of shape through the pandemic, so I'm also kind of working on that. So I'm kind of ready to get it back on the floor. But that's my game that I play. Ironically, I was a huge Supersonics fan here in Seattle for years, going to games on a friend of mine's tickets. And once they left, I just stopped watching basketball.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. But it was well-timed because it happened 2 years before the Sounders came to Seattle, and at which point my watching sport became soccer. So that's what I say. I play basketball, but I don't really watch it. I watch soccer, but I don't really play it. But yeah, I'm a huge soccer fan now, especially the MLS and American soccer, which is unusual for huge soccer fans who tend to, watch a lot more European soccer for good reason. And I do watch some. I do pay attention to it quite a bit, but still, I love watching the MLS and love watching the sport. I feel like I got in at the right time, not just for Seattle, because of course we got the team, but I feel like I got into a period where the quality of play in the league has just continued to improve, almost every year, and that's been a lot of fun to watch. So,
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Soccer got really big here in Utah because we have Real Salt Lake, and so I know that even my brother started playing, who is not. He's like has been anti-sports his whole life, but he all of a sudden started playing soccer. So I think it's fun to watch.
Real Salt Lake, Nick Raimondo, one of the best keepers the MLS has had, and a huge thorn in the Seattle Sounders side while he was in Real Salt Lake. I loved / hated watching him play. It was kind of sad that he never got above like the third string for the U.S. national team because, man, that man was talented. He was talented.
Like, I'm not a huge sports guy, and so like especially video games. I love playing video games. Rarely will I ever play a sports game, but I'll play FIFA. I love playing FIFA on the Xbox.
I went through about 5 years. I think FIFA 10 to about 15. I played quite a bit, so I played myself out on it, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun. I haven't played for a couple of years, but it's like the only sports other than if you go way back to like NBA or Street, whatever it was.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
NFL Blitz, all those. Anyways.
Yeah.
Well, what else have you got? What other hobbies?
I love to hike and backpack. Some things I don't do nearly as often as I want to, but planning a backpacking trip this summer. So I've did a lot of backpacking in Colorado as a kid, and still done some as an adult too. But also since I've been in the Seattle area, I've done a decent amount of backpacking over the years here and there, in the Cascades and over in the Olympic Mountains. And part of that has been for me is fishing. So fishing for me is a high altitude activity for the most part. So usually involves backpacking, not always, but usually.
Are you a fly fisherman?
So I learned to fly fish, the actual, casting, a river runs through it and all of that. And so I know the basics, but I was never good enough not to spend half my time untangling things. I won't say I failed at it, but I decided that it wasn't the best choice for me. I spent a good bit of time taking lessons and doing various things to get to the point of saying, this probably isn't the way I want to fish. I do fish with flies, but it's a much simpler fly and bobber kind of method that my dad taught me when I was younger. So
nice. That makes sense. Fly fishing is, I don't know, it's wild. I think it's fun to see, but I don't think I could do it. I don't know. Probably don't have the patience to learn it, but I've got friends that do it.
That's cool. Yeah. It's a fun thing to watch. After someone who knows what they're doing fly fishing, it can be incredibly elegant. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we see it all the time when we're like driving to some through the mountains and stuff, and there's some rivers, and people are just standing out there fly fishing. It's pretty cool. And you said you're a software engineer, so that's really. I am surprised. So I feel like there are a lot of software engineers that do design and teachers that do design. I feel like that's two industries we just like pull from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I see the same thing. I mean, I'm very aware of the software engineer side. I mean, I know many software engineers, and as a software engineer, I know why. Like I talked about earlier, being a builder, like, it's the same thing. You're building stuff, you're putting systems together and figuring out how they work together and all that. So it really gets into it. But you actually, you're right. I certainly on Twitter and otherwise know quite a few teachers who are designing games. And I hadn't really thought too much about that. Might have to ask a few of them about it, what their thoughts are.
Yeah. I wonder if my wife's a teacher. So I always wonder, like, is it that whole of like the way something is taught to somebody, or what kind of, I don't know. I think there's just like a certain level of like that education and teaching somebody something, or the way something adds up and works together. I don't know.
There's certainly, I think, sometimes underappreciated, although I think by the people I know, it's very well appreciated, is how part of designing a really accessible game is designing it to be easily taught. And so, actually that should or can often does affect your design. Like there are definitely things that I have designed like that is really cool. I love the incentives in that. I love this. I love that. And then I step back and say, I know all of that because I designed it. And I was there every step of the way. But now if I have to explain that to someone, what is that like? What is that process like? And how likely is it that everyone within a couple of minutes goes, got it? And I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see it. So, and a teacher, I would think would be really good at that part, and maybe quickly realizing, or just quickly going down better paths to things that can be taught because they understand what is needed to make something reasonably easy to teach.
Yeah, that is so interesting because the last game night we did Cascadia first, and I taught it, and probably took like 10 minutes to teach. Because I'm a bad teach. I am not great at teaching games. And the other person, like we were, after that we played Lords of Waterdeep, and my wife's friend is a teacher, and she was teaching us that. That was our first time playing it. And she probably taught it in maybe like 5 minutes, and we all knew exactly how to play it from that teacher. We were like, this seems more complicated than Cascadia. Like,
definitely.
You summarized that so well.
Yeah.
We could just like start playing and going at it. So,
well, I'm curious in your group, like, because this is definitely one of the things I've learned about board games over the years is like, are the learners, the people who needed to be taught, like, are their learning styles similar? Because I know from I'm often the person teaching games, in our group.
Yeah, same.
And so I'm teaching people with different learning styles, and certainly almost everyone I teach has different learning style from me, almost. And so I'm someone who you can step through all of the rules, give me an overview of the point and what's going there, and then step through the rules, and I'm good to go. Most of the people I teach, I will lose them if they take that approach. I'm much better off with the overview and a couple of strong bullet points about how the game works, and then let's go. And let's then ask a zillion questions, please, at every step. And that just works so much better for some people. And I know that frustrates certain people because they're just like, no, I need to teach you everything about the game before we start. Otherwise, I don't get it. It's like, well, that's not how these folks are going to learn. They don't learn like you. You don't learn like them. So you've got to figure that out. And it's a very interesting process to me that I definitely had to learn about over the years.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I as the main teacher of the games, like I teach my wife so many games, and she never doesn't get frustrated. Like you'd think I would get better at teaching her games, but she didn't get frustrated with Lords of Waterdeep. So maybe I need to take a page there and be like, okay,
there you go,
figure this out. But then I have my brother who I game with occasionally, and when I teach him a game, it is the smoothest thing. Like I'll teach it the exact same way I teach it to somebody else, but he gets it like instantly. And other people I have to answer like a bunch of questions, which is totally fine. And I expect that and want that. But with him, it's just like, no, I get it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Probably because we grew up playing games together.
Yeah. You probably have a couple of advantages there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We're the people. We were playing charades once, and somebody, like you were guessing a word or something, and then somebody said like on the nose type thing, like, yes, you got it. And both him and I at the same time were like, Mount Rushmore, because touching the nose, like for whatever reason, both of us that connected to Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. That is a fun thing about those kind of games. Like just one, I've had experiences where like sisters playing, and the clue that comes out for a word, everyone else is just like, what? But, it's tying to some childhood thing, and it may seem like a non sequitur, but it's just like one step away from the answer for them,
Yeah.
And they get it. It's like, oh, wow. I think games like that that may not be the core of their design, but it's a part of their design is to have that stuff happen and everyone else around the table just kind of marveling at it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you've got even things, code names, right? Like any sort of like where you're given a code word essentially, or where you're trying to get people to guess a certain thing. You've got those insides.
Yep, I've seen it with that too. The teams we pick for code names now in our groups are almost based on that. Is putting people together who do have that knowledge. Like,
oh, nice.
Okay, this is going to be hard. It's going to be harder to beat them, but I think people are overall going to have more fun this way. So
yeah, exactly. No. Well, let's come up with a ridiculous theme for a board game. Did you think of any while we were chatting?
No, I didn't. You warned me about this, but it doesn't mean that I've been thinking about it.
That's okay. Yeah, right? Like, we've been talking about so many other things. It's hard sometimes to try and formulate a whole idea and pitch it to me at the end of the show. No. I was sort of thinking while we were talking about Cascadia, of just ridiculous re-theme of it, essentially, of like, you could have made it fantasy animals, you have dragons and wyverns and werewolves or whatever, so you could, there's stuff there. Cthulhu, right? That's board game,
It's true.
Gold mine right there.
Well, I think even in my original, the bit of design notes I had for Cascadia, I was like, what the tiles are, what these 2 levels of tiles are, I don't know. And I said it could be, I think, city building was one of the things that I had written down as a possibility. So it's that kind of thing where you're setting, I don't know, like a building zone that, only allows certain kind of buildings. And then, what are the wildlife tokens, have to match those or something. So it's definitely things. It's kind of funny. This is just triggering a thing, but Point Salad now has a Pokemon themed version. Yeah. And I actually don't know quite how it plays out. Like, how does the theme apply? I'm not a Pokemon person to begin with, as much as I'm, of course, surrounded by board gamers, so many of which are Pokemon folks.
Right.
But I thought that was kind of fascinating. I was like, yeah, Pokemon Salad. Yeah, that's a change, all right. But it's interesting. There are games where the theme drives a lot of what goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And then there are games where it's just like, people call it pasted on theme. And, I don't mind that term, but unless you mean it as in a derogatory way, because I think, abstract games have pasted on themes, and that's cool. And it's fun. I think Point Salad was great. It's a little wordplay for those of us in the industry. And it gave a great chance for this kind of, punchy art that was fun and all of that. But didn't have to be salad. There's a lot of things that could have been without changing the gameplay or even the feel much at all.
Right.
So it's definitely ripe for that. And I guess Cascadia probably is as well. Maybe not quite as much as Point Salad. Point Salad seems easier, but
yeah, there definitely needs to be some tie-ins between things, but you can definitely do that kind of thing, like any sort of animal. Really, you could even do like deep sea type stuff where we're like, you have different water levels maybe, or different coral and deep trenches, and you have different animals you put on there. My favorite's the fantasy, or like, even just like cryptids. I don't know what I'm saying.
Sounds like it should be a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which could have like city environments and mountainous and forest, and Sasquatches go well. But that's the thing, right? With this too, I'm sure you heard this a million times. Like, why is there a fish here in this mountain? Or why is there fish here in this grasslands?
Yeah. Oh no, it's funny. There's a whole thing on Twitter. You can search for a hashtag prairie salmon. And it's funny because I'm mostly amused by it, but I'm also like, I also have to pause and say, salmon, go from the ocean into the bay or whatever and up in, and they go through rivers that go through grassland, that go through this. And some of them even go up as high as to be in mountains. Like the animals in Cascadia are actually matched, to what they can be in. Is it absolutely perfect? No, because it had to mathematically be perfect. But None of them are actually nonsensical. But, we didn't actually put even like a hint of a creek on the grasslands. So, it's understandable why that's funny to folks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a fun thing to see because it just shows how people are engaging with the game, and no one's ever annoyed. They're just amused, which I think is entirely appropriate.
I think that's the perfect description of it, right? Like nobody's like, this is stupid. Oh, what a stupid design. They're like, like, oh, look at this prairie fish. So I enjoy that. But that was the ridiculous theme I came up with, was just retheming your already awesome game.
There you go. You were talking about that. It was funny. I was thinking about Cryptid, because Cryptid is really interesting. I wonder how many people play Cryptid and don't know what a cryptid is. Because sure, if you read the rules, it explains what the game is doing and what cryptids are. But let's say you didn't read the rule book and you just had it taught to you mechanically. The art is not really cryptid oriented per se. You're just searching for a thing. It's out there, and it could kind of be anything. And that's actually really fascinating. Cryptid's one of those games. I think I might have mentioned this on another cast, but I told people this recently. I said I get really impressed with games that are of a genre or a mechanic that I'm not typically fond of or have a hard time with, that I sit and play and go, wow, that was fun. That was well put together. And Cryptid was one of those. I almost got to play Cryptid with Elizabeth Hargrave. That's when I met her for about a minute, but she had played the game before me. I played at the same table as her. And I played it. I got it done. I was like, that was a lot of fun. Like I did, that kind of deduction game is not usually up my alley, but this was really, really cool. And I've had that experience with a few games. Quacks is another one. Bag building, not my favorite. Push your luck. It depends a lot whether I like a push your luck game. It's not one I just gravitate towards. Oh, push your luck, I love it. It's like, I get a little leery, but some I like. And Quacks just seemed to put these together in a way that I was like, wow. And what's funny is I resisted playing Quacks for a while because of all that. I was like, it's probably not what I'm going to like. But everyone I knew who played it went, oh my God, it's so good. And so eventually I was like, I try this, and I was like, oh, I see why everyone's saying it's so good.
Yeah, it's justifiable. That's the hard part. Maybe it sounds like you're a little bit this way of sometimes when something gets really, really hyped, you're like, well, it can't be that good, right? Like I fight that sometimes.
I find for me being, someone who's on the board game social media a lot, I don't resist it in general, but I pay attention to where the hype is coming from. I don't know that I would have any advice to give there. I'm not trying to break it down, but often it depends on who I see, saying things about a game. Like there's just folks in certain areas that if they are hyping this, then it matters to me. Like that somehow I think their opinion is going to weigh on whether I'm going to like that game or not. Whereas other people hyping it, I don't know them, and hype is hype, and that's fine, whatever. But certain things come along. It's a great example, just a really pinpointed example. If I see Suzanne Sheldon say this roll and write is the best I've played this year, I'm going to be like, where can I buy this? It's just like, I know, I know her taste, and I know what she knows, and I'm not going to, yep. I need to try that out. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have the same. I mean, it's like in the industry, especially on Twitter, right? Every few months it gets brought up of like, well, paid promotions, like how trusted, how much can you trust a paid promotion? If somebody paid to have this video done, how much value does that have? Which I think it does. I think it has a lot of value, but I do have my certain like podcasts that I listen to, and I trust what they say because they will like review a game very honestly, and they'll say the good, the bad, and I think as long as, I don't know, but I think people who get paid to do that. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but yeah.
Okay. That's always an interesting conversation. I know what you're talking about, but it's a little bit about just knowing where you're getting your information from. And I agree, all of those are valid and valuable. It can help to know what category certain things are in, so what you're listening for. But I know plenty of people out there who that's their a part of their income is doing previews and all of the sort of stuff for games and all of that. And there are a bunch of them that I trust a lot, but I'm paying more attention to what they're saying about the game than the like rating or how highly they think it's more like what are they saying about the game. And you can learn a lot from those because most of those folks know games very well, and they're going to highlight the things that matter. And I love it.
Well, and I've had quite a few content creators, and maybe I never remember what was said off air or on air, so I won't say any names or anything, of course. But like, if they get paid to do an overview of a game that they play and they just don't like, they'll still be very enthusiastic about it, but they won't use certain terms. Essentially, like they won't lie about it, right? Like they'll stay honest. They'll present what it is. They may present what they like more than what they dislike about it. More so, it might just be like, so if you're into bag building and push your luck, Quacks is a great game for you type thing, as opposed to like, oh, I love the bag building and it's so, right. Just that certain wording where they're not being dishonest. You can sort of pick up on that, especially as you like become very familiar with the creators and stuff. Anyway, yeah. So on that note, oh, you know what? There's a question I wanted to ask. What's your preferred play style? Like, if you were playing with 3 other Randys, how would they be playing? Would they be playing aggressive, friendly? Like, would there be a lot of trash talk?
I am a little bit of a chameleon in this regard. Like, it will depend a lot on who I am playing with. And because I do play with lots of differing, groups with differing tendencies, I do play a lot of that. I am not just personally, trash talk is not, not a thing I really enjoy much, except in maybe quirky isolation here and there. So it's definitely not a big part of how I play or what I experience. But I can play games where I am so unconcerned with the competition that it's just like, I'm just, going through the motion sounds negative. It's not what I mean. I'm just like, I'm playing and I'm not thinking hard about, am I going to win or not? And then there are other times where, I'm really thinking about, how do I win this game? And I'm going to be upset if this person over here, beats me because I think I'm doing, a good game. And of course, that's one of the lovely tricks of many modern board games is hiding just enough information that most of us may not know. We can only have a feeling about where we are as far as, are we going to win? Are we going to lose? Are we going to be somewhere in the middle? And I've had those experiences where I'm like, I played pretty well. I'm happy. And then we do the final points. I'm like, I just got beat 120-90 and I thought I was winning. What the heck? What did I do? And that can be kind of fun. But it's like, I like a game like Concordia. I do tend to really myself enjoy, kind of really getting to the point where, while we have good conversation and it's fun, but I can have that focus of being heads down and getting just enough time in the game to really think through, what my best strategy is. I'm not one who can strategize from beginning to end, okay, this is where I'm going. But, I can think ahead enough that I enjoy that part of it and figuring it out. But I also am one who, you foil my plans, I can enjoy that too. Good job.
Yeah, that's part of the game, right? It's
exactly.
Well played, friend. Now I need to adjust. And very cool. Well, that answers that perfectly. So, well, why don't you go ahead and plug your stuff? Social media, everything.
So for me, as designer out there, really Twitter is my home. So I am RF_Seattle on Twitter. So you can give me a follow there. Yes, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram and all of that, but they're all a little different. Twitter is the main spot to be. Maybe a little more Instagram these days with some of the publishers getting a little more involved on Instagram, but mostly Twitter.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Randy, for coming on. I know you were busy getting ready to go to Germany, and now you've won it. you've won the Spiel Des Jahres. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Congratulations. Well earned, well deserved. The game is phenomenal. So congratulations again. Now on to the generic outro. If you enjoyed the show, you can go to iTunes, rate, review it. That would help the show get seen more and just show appreciation. I love doing the show. I would do it if I didn't have any listeners, because it's just so awesome to get to chat to all these amazing people in the community. But it also feels good to get a little recognition. You can also interact with me on Twitter @RiledNerd. You can email me, theboardgamecommunityshow@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. I love interacting with people. Tell me what games you've been playing. Just feel free to chat with me. I'm a chill person. If you're interested in actual play podcasts, I do one where I am the BM, aka Bunker Master, for a TCRPG based on the TCRPG of the Borderlands universe. It is so much fun. It's mostly comedy. There's a little drama in there, there's some action, but it's definitely more adult. So if that ain't your cup of tea, don't worry about it. As with every guest, you can go to the episode description and I will have links to their social media or anything necessarily relevant to what we talked about. So go check the episode description for those links. If you want to see my beautiful face, then at the end of the month, the last Thursday of the month, I'm usually doing a show with the Board Game Captain and Board Game Gran, and we usually have a guest. It is called Board Game Insight. And it's on the Board Game Captain's channel. So you can check that out, chat with us live, or watch it after the fact. I sometimes also play games with Mr. Rao Gaming, Ryan Rao, and have an awesome time doing that. So you can go check out those videos. And that is it. Until next time, keep nerding out.
Probably a couple years in, not very long, and maybe 1 or 2 years into playing board games as an adult, so maybe 10 years ago or so, we went on a little trip with myself, my partner, my son, and a few of his friends, and we played a game of Catan. I think it must have been 5 or 6 players, because I know we had to use the 5 to 6 player expansion. And one of the players just decided they had a single goal in the game. They got the rules and all that. I mean, we're talking like 10-year-olds, and they got one, goal in the game. They wanted to win longest road. That's all they cared about. They didn't say that for a while, but after a while, I think the question came up of like, yeah, what were they doing exactly? And he did. And once he got it, once he got like the 15, once he had gotten the full, so there's no way anyone could take him. He was just like, he was done. I did it, and he didn't engage with half the game. And he went away just loving the experience because he accomplished what he wanted to do. And it was kind of fun to watch and also go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I get it.